Coal mining has played a significant role in the American economy since the birth of industrialism. Even to the modern day, economic policy regarding coal mining has been a major talking point among politicians and has created conflict and controversy between unions, companies, and social activists. But especially in the past, coal was the only real source of energy. The then coming technologies like train and heating for homes was reliant upon it, especially the anthracite coal used due to its purity and high carbon content, making it the most efficient coal available. Because of the high demand for coal and the low cost of immigrant labor, the working conditions for miners were dreadful, as there were little to no regulations put in place. Mining was a difficult job with 10-hour days made especially miserable by just how dangerous it was. The mines were poorly made, causing sinkholes to occur, especially when the tunnels hit towns and rivers. The mines themselves were dark, confined space, held up by timber bars that were known to give way, crushing the unfortunate miners below. Miners commonly struck into natural gas deposits they called damps. The gases they released varied, but on occasion they were deadly to breathe in and flammable, causing explosions. But even if everything went well for a miner over his career, there was still black lung disease. An extremely common disease was caused by inhaling coal dust over extended periods of time. That kept surviving miners from enjoying or even seeing their retirement. Because of these conditions, the then unofficial United Mine Workers of America were formed as a mining union attempting to improve the conditions of the miners. John Mitchell, the president of the UMWA, wanted to negotiate with the mine owners, but his attempts were brushed off by George Bay, the president of one of the leading mine companies, Philadelphia and Reading Railroad. Bay stated, "Anthracite mining is a business and not a religious, sentimental, or academic proposition. I could not, if I would, delegate this business management to even so highly a respectable body as the Civic Federation, nor can I call myself to aid the eminent prelates you have named." Because of the rejection, on May 12, 1902, the anthracite coal miners of Scranton, Pennsylvania, voted to go on strike. Roughly 80% of the workers followed, totaling more than 100,000 strikers. About 30,000 left eastern Pennsylvania, mostly heading to the Midwest, and 10,000 returned to Europe. The 20% of miners who were not on strike were protected by private police hired by mine owners. This created a conflict with the strikers, often turning violent, and caused the more radical union members to scheme plots. William Durham was a schemer late in the strike who was shot and killed by a police officer for refusing to halt while loitering at the home of an anti-union miner. His house had been half-rigged with dynamite, though the story is unclear whether William or a more radical pro-union miner had placed the dynamite. The main conflict, however, resided between the union strikers and the industry baron owners. The goals of the union were recognition, decreased hours, and increased pay. It lasted 163 days, and neither side seemed to be backing down. Noticing this, the recently sworn-in President Theodore Roosevelt created the Commission of Labor to investigate the strike. This act followed his administrative philosophy, later being defined in his 1904 campaign as the Square Deal. He summed up in his own words, saying, "All I ask is a square deal for every man. Give him a fair chance. Do not let him wrong anyone. Do not let him be wronged." Roosevelt was part of the progressive movement, whose priority was handling social, economic, and environmental issues. So when the Commission of Labor reported the specifics of the strike to Roosevelt, he created the Coal Commission to mediate between the sides. The mediation contained 7 men, including Roosevelt himself and J.P. Morgan, who was an owner of Philadelphia and Reading Railroad Company. Winter was approaching, and the price of anthracite coal was rising. However, not a worry in the world came across Morgan and the barons, as profits were low in 1902 due to an oversupply of the coal, making a long strike welcome, especially because it was illegal for owners to conspire to slow production. Seeing the looming disaster, Roosevelt threatened to send the army to the coal fields. But rather than returning the miners to work on behalf of the owners, as the federal government had previously done, he threatened to seize ownership from J.P. Morgan and the other barons and return the fields to production under the federal government. After this and intense mediation, the commission came to a deal. The strike ended on October 23, 1902, and the conditions were met later on March 22, 1903, where the workers had their day reduced to 9 hours, wages increased 10%, though the UMWA were still not recognized by the companies, but by being the representatives of the Scranton miners, they were recognized by the government. To this day, the UMWA has continued strikes and negotiations improving the life of the American miner.
My daddy was a miner and I'm a miner's son, and I'll stick with the Union till every battle's won.